Well, I'm Josh Lowman. I own a company called Goldfront. We are a category design studio, and that means we help mostly tech companies create and own their own category. And we do this for companies like Uber and Slack and Stripe and many of those companies we work with when they're earlier stage startups or maybe mid-stage startups. And so we do a lot of work with startups. And for today's topic, the thing that matters about that is that essentially I help entrepreneurs figure out how to win and to win their own market.
As I'm thinking about the person who's going to be listening to this, and they literally all over the world, and there are entrepreneurs all over the world, and I think post COVID, there are a lot of people thinking or rethinking their what they want to do in life, their mission, their purpose. How much does that really early thinking, are you at that level or just a little past that level when you're working with people to figure out
Yeah, I mean,
their idea?
yeah, so like uh, what I do applies to every moment in the life of a company. It's a
Oh,
certain way of thinking about a company that if you are going to start a company, you want it to be categorically different than anything else that exists. People talk about differentiation is the key to winning in business, but the reality is that when we try to be different, we usually come out looking kind of the same to customers.
mm,
We think we're being different,
mm, mm.
but then when customers look at all of the competitors in the market and they're like, they all kind of look the same. And so I use this term categorically different to say, no, 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 we have to be much more different than we think that we need to be in order to really show up as different to the customer. And so I think that idea is essential to every moment in the life of a business and should be would be a very good tool to use when you come up with your first idea to vet whether are these business ideas good ideas or not.
I think that's kind of speaks to the name of the show, Making Waves: Conversations with Disruptors and Influencers. This is a disruptive way to think about the business you want to be in. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. And in terms of you know especially VC backed tech companies who are a lot of my customers, they almost all of them have in a pitch deck to get funding something that says they're trying to disrupt a certain industry.
Oh,
Yeah, they all want to do that, right? But they allow sameness to come back in and sort of the insidiousness of sort of doing things the way other people do it. They allow that to sort of like sort of sneak into all areas of their business. And that VC pitch deck they had was very disruptive, and then they sort of backslide into this like sameness. And so
mm.
what we do is try to help them live up to what they were promising their investors.
So in the this thesis that you're making now is that social media um, savviness or the skill of being able to use social media, I you're saying that that's so important that that's really going to drive, that's going to be one of the criteria by
Yeah,
which leaders are judged. What I'm curious though is when I think of social media, it's either I'm doom scrolling on Instagram and I'm looking at all of that, or TikTok, which is just frivolous, or I'm on LinkedIn and it's either someone's trying to sell me something, or there's announcements of new jobs and this and that. It, what's the new category of content that these leaders need to excel at?
mm-hmm. Well, first of all, let me sort of um, just try to get out on the table what my thesis is in the first place.
There you go.
So basically, what I'm saying is that uh, in the tech startup world, there is a very heavy kind of bias or more valuation of technical founders.
Mm,
and sort of like the MBA type founders that, business acumen and schooling, and then also, the ability to be like really great at programming and technical skills are the things that are most valued by investors if you're going to invest in a couple of founders, right? And that's been the case for a long time. And that, like, also with that is that product is what really matters, product and the ability to execute as a business, right? And, I think things are changing in business right now. One thing that's changing is that there's a shift to smaller businesses.
mm,
So a lot of the companies out there, they're using AI tools. They are trying to keep their staff lower. And, there's this talk about like who's going to be the first, billion-dollar business that only has one person working at it, right? A company of one that's worth $1 billion. Who's going to be it, right? So this is a whole trend. So that these companies are getting smaller, and then there's another trend, which is that um, companies have been, especially tech companies, have been enamored with this idea that, first of all, marketing is a little bit of a redheaded stepchild to the in the tech world. It's like it's a little bit behind like product and sort of like capital and what the CEO does. But in the marketing area and in sales, there's been this idea that everything should be run like a machine, right? So
mm,
we'll set up a machine and we'll send, a million cold emails, and then a certain percentage of those will respond, and a certain percentage of those will set up a sales call with us, and a certain percentage of those will decide to, sign a contract with us. And that's how we will, drive revenue. And it's this machine approach. But the problem is all of that is starting to fail because customers are seeing more and more that, oh, I'm just kind of inside of a piece of software. Like I get these cold
mm,
emails. I get like the way
mm.
I'm being treated is not really like a human being. It's like I'm inside some piece of software, and people are pushing that away. And so cold email and all these kinds of like marketing systems that have been built, especially by tech companies, but by all companies, are starting to they're starting to not have the same efficacy as they used to.
Mm. How so I 100% agree with you. I feel like I'm a piece of dust or sand in one of those machines sometime.
Yes,
And
exactly.
right.
Yeah. And
And
you don't like
and
that, right?
it does not feel good. And
Yeah.
sometimes I just stay in it just to see how abusive they're going to be to me with their texts and their emails and all of that. What's that feels really recent, like the last 2 years, and maybe even shorter, that those systems just aren't effective anymore. And it feels like there's also an order of magnitude more people trying to convince you that that's the way to go.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's because just like everything, it was a little bit successful for a while there. And then everybody said that's the playbook. And once you get enough people doing it, then now I'm getting, 1,000 cold emails in my inbox every day. And I'm just trying to figure out how I can ignore those or whatever it may be,
Well, I
or
have an
ads
AI
that
now,
come in.
right? An AI that's ignoring them for me.
Exactly. Right. Right. You could be advanced about it. So I think, that's my articulation of like the problem. And what's happening is these smaller companies, founders are trying a lot more. They're trying this play that I call founder brand. It's like, I'm going to go on LinkedIn or Instagram or whatever, and I'm going to build in public. I'm going to tell people like I'm doing this thing. I'm on X. I'm showing people like this is the company that I'm building, and people are interested. People are actually interested in that because you're being vulnerable. And a lot of these founders who are running this founder brand play, they're figuring out how to use hooks and to write really well for social media so that people will give them their attention. And not everybody can do this because you have to be a good writer or have a good ghostwriter or whatever. But this is a huge sort of untapped area of value for these founders. And what I believe is going to happen is that the investors who invest in companies like this are going to change how they value founders. And as soon as they see a founder who's going to be good at founder brand, who's going to be good at this, what
Founder
I'm calling,
brand. Is that what you said?
yeah, that's the
What's
play I
that?
call it. That's like the play that I would call it. So, I'm saying I called it the creator CEO. That's the person, right? So like I'm a creator CEO. I'm developing my audience. I'm a creator, sort of like another word for an
The
influencer.
one person billion-dollar company. That's your
Yes.
kind of that if that's the end piece, you're working backwards to say, okay, that person would be called a creator
I'm not
CEO.
personally, I'm not saying like the goal is to be a one person
No,
billion
no,
dollar
I,
company.
no, I understand, but that
Yeah.
part of the headspace is thinking that way. So tell me more about Founder Brand.
I mean, it's sort of like there's just another way to talk about the creator CEO, really.
Got
It's
it.
a play. So, so instead of creating, most founders create a big marketing apparatus around their brand, around their company's brand. And what's happening more and more, especially on social media, and because social media is where we spend our time now, largely,
Yeah.
especially young people. It's when we were kids, it was CBS and NBC, and no, it's TikTok and Instagram and LinkedIn, and so a founder brand play is basically just saying instead of having my company be the main brand that drives interest and revenue, the founder of our company, that human being, that individual person, is going to be the main brand that drives interest in what we're doing. So, an example of founder brand would be Elon Musk.
Sure. Sure,
Steve
sure,
Jobs would be another example.
sure.
But today, this founder brand play is much more accessible now that you have social media. That if you can be good at social media, you can drive a lot of attention.
I'm reminded of a book that's probably 40 years old now. It was Tom Peters, and he said, brand you,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so being the face of the company, literally, it's you just need an iPhone and a ring light and accounts
Yeah,
and so the barrier to entry is literally nothing. And you don't need possibly it helps to have someone guide you on the kinds of content you do. So I want to ask specifically, so the entrepreneur who's listening, the founder who's listening right now, what do they say? What kind of content do they make? Does it
mm-hmm.
like that?
Mm-hmm.
That's because that's like kind of the big question. You say, okay, the deal is I need you to talk every single day to either write or talk or be accessible uh,
Mm-hmm.
in social media. And yet I'm founder. I'm trying to run my company. I'm
Yeah.
trying to do all these things. Yet the thesis is this is such an important skill that you need to give it time and attention.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same thing as like an MBA or learning how to do computer programming, right? It's like those things are things they're learned skills. You have to spend time, learning how to do them. And, when for creator CEOs, they're on the other side of this and it's working for them, they don't see a trade-off between the business and the time that I spend getting my message out on social media, right? It's the same thing, right? Like,
Mm.
oh, I should be working on the product. Well, this is the same thing as working on the product. You're creating demand for a product, right? And I think in terms of how to learn this or what they should be doing, like for example, I took a 5-week program called Unignorable that is just about 400 people in a cohort learning how to grow their audience
Mm.
online, learning how to write hooks, learning what kind of content would be interesting, learning the strategy of it, all the little tactics of the particular algorithm or the platform. So I think that's really important. I don't think you can just necessarily show up and start like writing things online and expect that that's going to work.
So it
something that
feels,
needs to be taken seriously, I think.
yeah, I'm curious. So you took a class, so it's the kind of thing that, if I'm an MBA student or I'm a student, and I want to be good at this, I need to go learn it someplace. So you gave us a place. Do you feel that there is this going to eventually end up at Stanford and MIT and et
Absolutely.
cetera?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. I mean, there are so many founders out there that are killing it right now in today's
Oh,
weird economy through using this creator CEO approach. So, one example would be there's a guy on LinkedIn named Adam Robinson. He's been working for the last 2 years to post on LinkedIn and grow his audience. For the first year or so, everything that he did failed. uh, in the last 9 months, he started a new SaaS company, six to 9 months, and it went from 0 to 3 million ARR in that time, and it's been like about 7 months. And he spends 25 hours a week on LinkedIn. His main job is to drive revenue through LinkedIn, not to go work on the product or do businessy things.
that's a huge shift.
Yeah, and there's many founders who are finding out, wow, it's really hard to make a business work the old way. And of course, it's really competitive out there. If you want attention, you have to be really good at this. I think one of the things that he did was he hired a pretty expensive ghostwriter who was great at helping him get up to speed to do this. But I think all of us who are entrepreneurs have to take this a lot more seriously. I tell them, the CEOs that I advise, and a lot of them are like, I'm too busy for that. But at the same time, their business is not growing as much as they want it to.
I'm I'm taking all of this in, and I it feels like there's a fundamental shift that's going on. And Josh, I'm so glad you were able to bring this to the attention of our TEDx Santa Barbara audience and give us something to chew on. This is worthy of much longer discussion. I really appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you. It's been a real pleasure to be here and talk with you.